Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that you all flagged as super important. Antimicrobial resistance.
AMR.
Yeah, AMR. And how it connects to the bigger picture of public health.
Right.
You've given us a ton of great stuff to work with here. We've got reports from the World Health Organization.
The WHO.
Yeah, a CDC video on public health basics. And then even more from the WHO on those neglected tropical diseases.
Oh, that's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
These sources really highlight how interconnected these global health challenges truly are.
So the WHO, they don't sugarcoat it, right?
Yeah.
They're calling AMR a major global threat.
Yeah.
And the numbers they give are pretty startling.
Really are.
Over 1.2 million deaths. Wow. Directly from bacterial AMR in a single year. And then it contributed to nearly 5 million deaths worldwide.
It really underscores why AMR is considered one of the most pressing public health threats we face today.
That's a lot.
And what's particularly concerning is how it jeopardizes those everyday medical procedures that we just take for granted.
Yeah.
You know, surgeries, C-sections, cancer treatments.
Right.
All of them become so much riskier when those infections can't be treated reliably.
It's kind of unsettling to imagine, like, simple infections becoming life-threatening again.
It is.
And the WHO report even mentions the potential economic fallout from this.
Oh, yeah.
Could be $1 trillion US.
$1 trillion with a T.
With a T in extra healthcare costs by 2050.
That's right. And that $1 trillion figure, it's not just about healthcare costs, though.
Right.
You know, imagine the potential for economic instability worldwide.
Oh, wow.
Global trade could be disrupted, and entire industries that rely on, predictable healthcare systems would feel the impact.
It goes way beyond just medicine.
Way beyond.
So to really grasp the scale of this, I think we need to kind of understand what's driving it, right?
For sure.
And the sources that you've provided point to, like, a complex web of factors.
Right? Human behavior, environmental conditions, both at play here.
So misuse and overuse of antimicrobials.
Yeah.
We're talking antibiotics,
Yeah.
antivirals, the whole gamut. That seems to be like a primary culprit.
Yeah.
And it's not just about how we use them personally.
Right.
It's also about how they're used in animals.
In agriculture.
And agriculture.
That's a key point.
So thinking about the CDC video.
Yes.
And its focus on those health determinants. Socioeconomic factors like poverty, lack of clean water. Sanitation. Those actually make the problem much worse.
They contribute to the spread of infections.
Right.
And they increase the need for antimicrobials, which in turn just fuels more resistance.
So it's like this...
It creates this...
vicious cycle.
Yeah, vicious cycle.
Okay, so I'm seeing how interconnected all of this is.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin to address this?
Well,
The WHO mentions this One Health approach as, like, a crucial strategy.
the One Health approach.
Yeah.
It emphasizes how interconnected human, animal, and environmental health truly are.
Okay.
It recognizes that we can't address these issues in isolation. It's a much more holistic view.
So it's about collaboration.
Collaboration.
Breaking down those silos between different fields.
Exactly.
So the WHO mentions things like the Global Action Plan on AMR and World AMR Awareness Week.
Yes,
Are those examples of this One Health approach in action?
absolutely.
Okay.
They embody the spirit of collaboration and highlight the need for these global multi-sectoral efforts to combat AMR.
This is making me think about that CDC video
Okay.
and how it talked about those core functions of public health. Assessment, policy development, and assurance.
Right.
And they used a historical example, Dr. John Snow and the London cholera outbreak back in the 1800s.
Oh, fascinating.
He tracked cases, pinpointed the contaminated water source, the Broad Street pump,
Yeah.
and by simply removing the pump handle,
Wow.
he directly intervened to stop the outbreak.
Dr. Snow's work was groundbreaking.
Pretty incredible, right?
He's considered one of the founders of modern epidemiology.
So how does this historical example relate to the issue of AMR?
Well, it highlights the importance of understanding the interconnectedness of factors like sanitation, water quality, and disease transmission.
Right.
You know, in the case of AMR, we also need to investigate the complex interplay of human behavior, environmental factors, and antimicrobial use
Okay.
to develop effective interventions.
So it's not just about finding a magic bullet solution.
Right.
It's about recognizing that public health challenges are complex.
They are.
and often require these multifaceted solutions.
Precisely.
Dr. Snow's story also emphasizes the importance of timely action, right?
Yes.
Just like removing that Broad Street pump handle stopped the cholera outbreak. Taking decisive steps now to address AMR and promote responsible antimicrobial use can help avert a much larger crisis down the line.
For sure.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Speaking of other pressing health challenges, the WHO source on neglected tropical diseases, or NTDs, was eye-opening.
It is.
Over 1 billion people affected globally.
1 billion.
And you mentioned how these diseases thrive in conditions of poverty and limited healthcare access.
Right.
Bringing us back to the CDC video's discussion on the social determinants of health.
It's a crucial point.
Yeah.
NTDs like Buruli ulcer, dengue fever, leprosy cause a significant burden of disease, in terms of mortality, disability, economic impact. They disproportionately affect impoverished communities, highlighting those stark inequities in global health.
So while combating AMR is critical, we can't overlook these other health challenges.
We can't.
That plague vulnerable populations.
No.
Addressing these interconnected challenges requires a holistic approach that considers both immediate interventions and long-term strategies aimed at tackling those underlying social and economic factors.
That's right.
Okay, so we've talked about the scope of the issue. Now let's dig into some potential solutions.
Okay.
Where do we go from here?
Well, the WHO roadmap for NTDs outlines a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
They focus on preventative chemotherapy, vector control, and improving water and sanitation as key strategies. They've even set some ambitious targets for 2030, including a 90% reduction in people needing treatment for NTDs.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a massive undertaking. But it's inspiring to see that level of global commitment.
It is.
I'm curious, though, what about those who are already dealing with the consequences of AMR? What are some of the immediate interventions that could help those individuals?
That's a great question, and it leads us to a very important concept. Antimicrobial stewardship.
Antimicrobial stewardship.
Yes.
What exactly does that mean in a practical sense?
It's about using antimicrobials responsibly, and only when they're truly necessary.
So that means like completing the full course of antibiotics even if you start feeling better sooner.
Exactly. It also means understanding that antibiotics don't work on viruses.
Right.
So demanding them for a cold or the flu is counterproductive.
Right.
Basically, it boils down to following your doctor's instructions carefully.
This reminds me of the CDC video.
Okay.
And its discussion of those public health interventions. They emphasize that it's not always about those big sweeping actions.
Right.
Sometimes it's those individual choices that add up to a collective impact.
Absolutely. Individual actions do matter. In fact, the CDC video highlighted how important our health behaviors are for our overall well-being. Simple things like diet, exercise, whether we smoke, our alcohol consumption, all contribute to our risk for various diseases.
Right.
And some of those diseases might eventually require antimicrobial treatment.
So if we adopt healthier habits, we're not just improving our personal health.
Right.
We're potentially reducing the need for antimicrobials down the line.
Exactly.
And helping combat AMR.
It all ties together.
It really does highlight how interconnected everything is.
It does, and it underscores that public health is about so much more than just treating diseases. It's about creating those conditions that support health and well-being for everyone.
Which brings us right back to those social determinants of health we talked about earlier. The WHO source on NTDs really emphasized how these diseases hit impoverished communities with limited access to health care, clean water, sanitation, the hardest.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
The fight against AMR and NTDs is intertwined with issues of social justice and equity. We can't truly address these health challenges without tackling those underlying socioeconomic factors that make certain populations more vulnerable.
It's a stark reminder that good health isn't just an individual responsibility.
It's not.
It's about building a society where everyone, regardless of their background or circumstances, has the opportunity to thrive and live a healthy life.
Precisely. Public health policies, programs,
Right.
interventions need to consider these social determinants and prioritize reaching those most in need.
It's like, remember Dr. Snow and the cholera outbreak?
Yeah.
It wasn't enough to just identify that contaminated water source.
Right.
He also advocated for sanitation reform.
Absolutely.
And addressed the systemic issues that allow those conditions to exist in the first place.
That's a great point.
So applying that principle to AMR and NTDs,
Yeah.
we need both those immediate interventions and those long-term strategies that get to the root causes of these health challenges.
We need both.
We've talked about individual responsibility.
Yeah.
But what about those global efforts?
Right.
The WHO source on NTDs mentioned some pretty impressive global collaborations.
It did.
What are some of those initiatives doing to combat AMR and NTDs?
Well, there's a lot happening on that front.
Okay.
Initiatives like the WHO Roadmap for NTDs and those ambitious 2030 targets for disease reduction and eradication demonstrate a commitment to collective action. But global cooperation isn't just about setting targets.
Right.
It's about sharing knowledge, resources, and best practices.
The WHO report also highlighted the importance of surveillance and data collection to understand and respond to these health threats.
Right.
And they discussed this system called GLASS.
GLASS.
The Global Antimicrobial Resistance and Use Surveillance System.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
What's that all about?
GLASS is a fascinating initiative. Imagine a global network of scientists and health experts constantly tracking antimicrobial resistance patterns.
Okay.
Similar to how meteorologists track weather patterns.
Interesting.
They collect data from all over the world to identify emerging threats, track the spread of drug-resistant infections, and inform policies and interventions.
Wow.
It's like a global early warning system for antimicrobial resistance.
That's impressive.
It is.
Data like that could be incredibly valuable in helping us stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. Just like Dr. Snow used data to map cholera cases and identify the source of the outbreak, GLS helps us see those larger patterns and understand the factors driving AMR.
So it's not just about reacting to existing threats.
It's not.
It's also about anticipating and preparing for future challenges.
Precisely. And the WHO report also mentioned the pressing need for research and development, especially for new antimicrobials, diagnostics, and vaccines. They even use the term antibiotics pipeline crisis, which sounds pretty alarming.
An antibiotics pipeline crisis?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It refers to the fact that the development of new antimicrobials is lagging behind the emergence of drug-resistant pathogens.
Oh, wow.
We're essentially in a race against time.
Yeah.
And we need to accelerate those research and development efforts to stay ahead of these evolving threats.
So if we're not developing new drugs fast enough, what are some of the other options?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
There's a lot of promising research happening in areas like phage therapy and antimicrobial peptides.
Phage therapy?
Yes.
Antimicrobial peptides? Those sound pretty complex.
They are, but they hold a lot of potential. Phage therapy utilizes viruses that specifically target bacteria.
Interesting.
While antimicrobial peptides are naturally occurring molecules with antimicrobial properties.
So these are just a couple of examples of the innovative approaches being explored.
Yes.
To address these challenges of AMR.
Right.
It sounds like we need to think outside the box.
We do.
And explore those alternative approaches to treatment and prevention.
Absolutely. We can't rely solely on traditional methods.
Right.
We need to encourage innovation and explore all available avenues.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Individual responsibility, global collaboration, the need for innovation. It seems like combating AMR and NTDs requires a truly multifaceted approach.
That's a great way to summarize it. We need to combine individual action, community engagement, sound public policy, global cooperation, and scientific innovation to tackle these complex health challenges effectively.
It's a lot to take in, but it's encouraging to see so many different avenues for progress. Thinking back to that CDC video, they had this health impact pyramid, right?
Yes, it illustrates how different public health interventions can have varying levels of impact. Interventions targeting those broader socioeconomic factors. Things like poverty, education, and access to clean water and sanitation tend to have the widest reach and often require less individual effort, making them potentially more effective in the long run.
That makes sense. Addressing those underlying issues can create this, ripple effect across so many aspects of health.
Exactly. It's about creating those conditions that allow people to be healthy. Rather than simply treating the symptoms of illness after they arise.
And that brings us right back to the WHO roadmap for NTDs. which emphasizes how these diseases thrive in conditions of poverty and limited healthcare access.
Right.
Breaking that cycle seems crucial not only for combating NTDs, but for boosting overall global health.
Absolutely. And that's where those ambitious 2030 targets come in.
Right.
Aiming for a 90% reduction in the number of people needing treatment for NTDs would be a game changer.
A game changer for millions of lives.
Millions of lives.
And the goal of eradicating at least 2 diseases.
Yes.
Dracunculiasis and yaws. That's huge.
It is.
To be honest, I'm not familiar with those. What exactly are they?
Dracunculiasis, also known as guinea worm disease, is a parasitic infection that you get through contaminated water. It causes these incredibly painful blisters and ulcers.
Oh, wow.
Often leading to disability. Yaws is a bacterial infection that primarily affects children and impacts their skin, bones, and joints.
Oh, no.
Thankfully, it's treatable with antibiotics. But without treatment, it can lead to disfigurement and lifelong health issues.
It's heartbreaking to think about the suffering those diseases cause.
It is.
Especially for children. Eradicating them would be an incredible achievement for global health.
It would be monumental. It demonstrates that even when faced with seemingly impossible challenges, progress is achievable. But it takes political will, scientific breakthroughs, and community-driven action.
Working in unison.
Working in unison.
That idea of collective action keeps coming up.
It does.
We can't just sit back and expect governments and big organizations to solve these problems on their own, right? Our individual choices, community engagement, and advocacy all have a part to play.
Every action, big or small, contributes to the solution.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you all with something to think about. Given what we've explored today, the interconnectedness of AMR, NTDs, public health, and those social determinants of health. What role do you see yourself playing in all of this?
That's a great question.
It is a question worth pondering.
It is.
And if you're feeling inspired to learn more, I encourage you to delve deeper into those source materials that we discussed today. There's a wealth of information waiting to be discovered.
There is. And remember, while the challenges are significant, the potential for positive change is immense.
Absolutely.
By working together, we can create a healthier and more equitable world for everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you.
We'll catch you next time for another exciting exploration of knowledge and ideas. Until then, stay curious.